Mr. Pop.
We soared away together with our wings spread. Just a schmuck who God really struck. Oh, what luck! Aim of a buck to the head. Hello, Wastelanders! This is DJ Pony reporting to you live from this fine piece of pre-war broadcasting ass that I call home. And I do call it home, because while I disagree with many of the policies of my landlords here in 10 Pony Tower, this microphone helps me deliver the truth to more of you ponies than these rusty pipes could yell. You see, children, I know what it's like out there in the wastes. I've seen more than my fair share of the horrors that many of you face every day. This harsh life of ruin and radiation is a sad descent from the Equestria of days past. But it is the world we have, a world where we must make decisions of life or death on a daily basis, decisions that may not conform to the luxury of morality, and force us to confront at our very core what it means to do the right thing. It is for this very reason that I am beginning a new segment called Confessions of a Wasteland Pony. Here I will be talking with you, the average citizen of post-apocalyptia, so that we can hear your stories, celebrate your triumphs, learn from your mistakes, and above all, find out just how similar we really are. With me today is Battered Blade, an ex-raider. She's here to bring new insight into the world of one of the Wasteland's most prevalent parasites. Battered, thank you for being here.
It's no big deal.
Now, Battered, you have quite a unique story compared to the average Wasteland pony. Tell us about where you grew up.
Alright. I was born in what was once Ponyville. My mother was part of this gang of raiders called the Smile Squad.
The Smile Squad?
Yeah, thank Luna, they don't exist anymore. But before I was born, they controlled pretty much the whole area around Ponyville. They took on the name after being inspired by that billboard outside of town. Besides the normal raider shit of stealing, raping, and killing, the Smile Squad wanted to set themselves apart by cutting smiles into the cheeks of the victims. It was their signature, and also a way to mark their territory with the disfigured bodies of the dead. Bastards.
So your family had already been in the gang for a while by that point.
Oh yeah. If my mother ever did have a life before the gang, she sure didn't bother to tell me about it. She was probably just like me, born to some filly taking her first steps into adulthood. Which probably makes me a thoroughbred or some shit.
You've mentioned your mother, but did you ever know your father?
No, I didn't. The sitting leader of the gang usually gets free rein on the mayors too stupid or strung out on mentals to care. So, odds are it was whatever piece of work was wearing the crown at the time.
And you have no memory of him?
Luckily, the position had a very quick turnover rate. Just like so many of the other raided clans, they had the flawless system of kill the boss, become the boss. There must have been at least 3 of them before I got my cutie mark.
That's another thing that I think a lot of listeners would like to know more about. Do you mind describing your cutie mark?
It's fine. I thought you'd ask. For those of you out there that can't see this scarred and tattered flank, it's a picture of a jagged metal bar struck through a pony's leg. As horrifying as it may sound, it's pretty tame compared to some of the other raider marks out there. They say that cutie marks are supposed to signify the destiny of that pony, like a snapshot representing some essential part of that pony's life. When you've met the kind of monsters I have, you quickly discover just how deranged those destinies can be. When you're born to raiders, live as a raider, and die as a raider, that's the kind of mark you get. I don't blame mothers for running when they see my mark. It'd be straight up stupid to sit them down and get the full story behind it before making a judgment. No offense.
None taken. I am not a smart pony. But of course you can't just judge a pony by their backside. If you were really bad news, my assistant Homage would be reading my obituary on the air tomorrow.
He's sweet.
Why thank...
But not as sweet as that adorable mare. Mm-mm.
Okay, I should have expected that. She's the personable one and I'm the recluse. But, back to your cutie mark. When, and more importantly, how did you end up with such a graphic image to represent your destiny?
Well, as I said, the leader of the Smile Squad was basically the toughest nag in the group at the time. They were quite showy about it too. Remember when I said that they wore a crown before? That wasn't a figure of speech. The motherfucker wore a crown. It looked like it started out as a buffalo skull or something. Then, somewhere along the line, a fallen leader happened to be a unicorn, and the new one, a particularly racist earth pony. So, he decided to saw the horn off of the body, and nailed it to the top of the helmet.
Yikes. I feel like a lot of these raiders could have been designers or fashionistas in a different world.
No kidding. That tradition continued on, too. If the dead leader were an earth pony, his or her tail would be attached to the helmet instead. When I was a filly, there must have been parts from over 24 ponies, and 1 buffalo, on that crown. A fitting symbol for everything they stood for and celebrated, I guess. Being the most physically threatened pony in the group, and wearing this unimaginably scary helmet of death, the leader of the Smile Squad basically got anything they wanted. That included lots and lots of chems. Most of the raiders are junkies, so half of the fight for power is for control of the drug supply.
Might as well round out all the vices.
You don't know half of it. One of the leaders, when I was young, killed his predecessor. Decided to celebrate by opening up the main stash, and OD'd that same night.
And this has to do with your cutie mark? Because...
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's the other thing about chems. They tend to melt your brain. Even once you've gone clean. You never really get that edge back.
How long have you been clean?
Wow, let's see. Coming close to 20 years now.
That is a real accomplishment. Drug addiction is not an easy thing to shake. It must not have been easy.
It's an everyday battle. The thirst is always there. Especially when your first taste of it was on your mother's tit. I don't think anyone grows up normally anymore. But to be born into a raider clan, it's hard to imagine much worse. From infancy, you have to fight and scavenge to survive. Your chances will vary based on how much your mother gives a shit about you. In the case of my mother, I'm lucky I even got breast milk. You're mostly entertainment for the gang as a whole. They lock 2 of us up in a cage together and leave us there until one knocked the other out. We'd be left to eat whatever scraps were on the floor after a meal. We were a bunch of runts that posed no threat to the adults. But that didn't stop them from treating us like punching bags whenever they felt like. Sometimes, a kid would pay the price. The ultimate price. Because its parents stepped out of line, or pissed off the leader somehow.
That's horrific. That you would have to go through all that as just a filly.
You think that's the worst part. It's not. A lot of us envied them. Remember when I said that the leader treated the group like his own harem? Yeah. That wasn't limited to those of age.
Oh, Celestia.
One day, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I was going to fight and hopefully die. I was hiding in a shack when I heard him calling my name. He was walking slowly, prowling around the wreckage of the old schoolhouse where a lot of us lived at the time. When he nudged open the door of the tool shed, I jumped from the top shelf and drove the sharpest piece of metal I could find straight down through that fucker's leg. We were both so startled at the blow that I was able to bolt past him and escape into the woods.
And that was the last you saw of him?
Thankfully, it was. Turns out he ripped himself away from the makeshift blade and hobbled back into Ponyville Library, which was the main lair for the Smile Squad. But before he could reach any kind of medicine, an opportunistic pony sliced his throat, and the circle of death continues.
So you were able to get away at least?
I was, but that didn't mean my life turned into sunshine and rainbows. Those first few months were the hardest of my life. I was barely 8 years old, alone, in one of the worst areas of the wasteland. The one place I knew and was familiar with would be a suicide to return to. So instead, I had to face the unknown.
Where did you go?
Nowhere at first. I acted more or less on instinctive to survive. I scavenged for food when travelers left a campsite. I got really good at using my magic to tear apart food containers to get every last bite inside.
Did you ever approach them? Ask for help?
Not really, no. Because at that time, I had never met a good pony. Every adult I ever known was a threat, in one way or another. Then, there were the other foals. You know how they can misbehave when they're in their formative years? Normalish parents try to reverse that and set them on the right path. But when those instincts aren't softened, when no one cares to instill society, or morals, or the idea of intrinsic value into them, things get bad, fast. By age 4, I was getting injured more by fillies my age than adults. The more they wanted us to fight, the more we wanted to as well. That is how raiders are really born. Which is why raiders seem to get worse as time goes on. Every time the cycle happens, we lose more of ourselves. Now, they're not much better than the feral ghouls. They've reduced themselves down to being just like the other monsters of the mega spells.
But that doesn't mean there is no hope, right? You were able to run away.
I was able to get away from the Smile Squad and my junkie mother, sure. But just like how you can't just stop a baby manticore from being a manticore, didn't mean I wasn't still a raider. It wasn't long until I felt confident enough to move beyond scavenging and start robbing ponies outright. This thing is a confessional, isn't it?
Well, to be fair, I'm not divinely certified, but I'm here to listen just as much as I talk, and this segment probably wouldn't exist without inspirational stories like yours. You were saying you started mugging travelers for food?
Food, water, medicine, weapons, anything useful. It was the only thing I knew, the only thing I'd been taught, how to be a raider. As I got older, the crimes got worse. It wasn't long until I made myself a decent living along the highway of south of Manhattan. There was this old opera house that no one go near. Rumor was it that it was infested with bloodwings, which was true enough. But I had gotten really good at magic, and really smart about hiding and striking at just the right moment. I used this old officer's sword, pre-war, quality metal, and really sharp. It took me a whole day, but I was able to root through the ruins and slice their throats one by one. After that, I had a home no one would come near, perfect view of the road, and enough leather to keep my body at 100%.
You took on a pack of bloodwings? By yourself? How old were you?
I was still a teenager. You'd think that was kind of skill I could be just a trapper, live off the land without bothering any pony. But that somehow never occurred to me.
How long did it go on like that?
Too long.
What changed?
It was late afternoon, sunset. It was the middle of winter, and it had begun to snow. I was perched where I always was when I noticed a group of ponies set up a camp behind a rest stop. Their campsite fire was hidden from most of the highway, but not from me. I had a perfect view of all of them from behind. There were 8 of them. 4 were huddled close to the warmth, and the others were standing off to the sides, watching the alleyways that faced the road. It looked like they took turns pulling this large 4-horse cart. A lot of the major courier groups will transport goods in numbers, so they don't have to make as many trips. It drew more attention to them, but that was less risky than one stallion doing it alone 8 times. It wasn't just any cart either. Even though they'd scratched off the logo, I could tell from the wheels that it was a medical wagon, which meant whatever was inside was either a treasure trove of chems or something equally valuable that they kept in metal containers. So, I moved in for the attack.
Same as the Bloodwings?
Same as the Bloodwings. The first dumb buck walked away from the group to take a leak. He didn't have a chance. I was then able to get the next 2 as they were circling the building. The 4th one finally caught on and lured the group. They started yelling and calling for the first 3. They ran all over the place looking, but they never saw their buddies sitting on the roof. After clearing the others, the last one had jumped into the cart. I flung open the door right as she threw a hoof at me, but I caught her arm and got her in the throat. I thought she had a terrible form, like some novice new to the game. Didn't she know that you can't be weak? That you have to learn to fight if you're going to survive in this world? Without another thought, I walked past her and found the precious cargo that they were transporting. She was a foal, not even a year old. Just laying there in one of the storage bins. She was wrapped up in blankets, clutching a teddy bear with a missing eye.
What did you do?
I stood there, staring at her for a while. She started squirming when she left the cold air, and started to whimper. And all at once, I started crying too. I'd never seen anything so small, so precious, so innocent, whose whole life I had completely destroyed. I held up spending the whole night there, keeping her safe and warm.
Oh, now you've got me crying.
Turns out that the wagon wasn't a courier team at all. Father, grandfather, uncle, aunt, 2 brothers, a sister, the mother, and 1 little filly. They were a family. You could tell just by looking at them. Beneath the jackets and the winter barding, they all had bright emerald green coats, and each had a cutie mark related to wheat harvesting. I had to kill them all. Despite everything I'd taken away from it, that little foal had given me something so valuable. She had shaken me to my core, forced me to look at the sum of what my life had become, and gave me the chance to change. Instead of preying on those who had to make that long journey to Manhattan, I started protecting them. I would still sit on my perch, as I always had. But this time, I would make sure that they had made a safe passage. If any pony was attacked, I would help them out. I'd spend most of my life destroying the lives of others. I had a lot to make up for. I cleaned up the opera house and set up the escorting operation. It would be better than just gun-for-hire mercs. Batted's bodyguards would help ponies travel safely, as guardians to wherever they needed to go. I met some good ponies over the years, teamed up with those I only wish I could be. There might not be a lot of us, but we do what we can.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You see, Ponies of the Wasteland, this is the point of everything. It doesn't matter what you might have done in your past, you can still become a positive force. Whether you protect travelers from possible harm, bring an uplifting voice to those who might need it, or even something as simple as being good to your fellow pony. You can bring light to this darkness that we call home. It's going to take all of us working together, doing what we can, and helping those who need it. But if everyone does their part, we might even bring the sunshine back again. And if you don't believe me, I encourage you to tune in for a few more episodes. In the lives of others, there are lessons we can all learn from. Before we go, Battered, what happened to the filly?
Well, when you are scavenging through the wastes and find something truly valuable,
you just can't let her go.
Every story must come to an end. I wish I could tell you more. We've had our sadness and we've had our fun, something we can't ignore. And though we may fly to the east and the west, and distance may keep us apart,